Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sue on Chat to Sue, a parent's channel where we talk about stuff that we really need to talk about. Today, we're talking about gaslighting. What is gaslighting? Gaslighting is when someone, a parent, a teacher, a spouse, deny your reality. Right? They will say mean things and they will say to you, oh, but it was just a joke. Or they'll say something and they will deny it later, like, oh no, but I didn't say that. Right? But today I want us to focus on children. When children are gaslit, it becomes a problem because they grow up to be adults who needs to protect themselves from something. They grow up with a mask, because they were never believed, right? So I've got Dr. Ramani, of course, to tell us more about that and how to protect our children from being gaslit by everyone. Can be people who want to take advantage of them, people who are just cruel, right? But let's hear what Dr. Rahman is saying.
How many of you have watched a child get gaslighted right in front of you and not known what to do? Let's talk a little bit about that, and let's talk about how we ungaslight children. If you're new to this channel, I'm Dr. Ramani, and this is a YouTube channel where we talk about narcissism. If you're new, please subscribe. I would love to have you be part of this community, and if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. By doing that, you actually help other people get told about these videos, and this particular topic actually could be one that's useful for a lot of people to hear about. So let's talk about it. How do we ungaslight children? This issue of gaslighted children, it's an issue that many people in narcissistic and antagonistic co-parenting situations have asked me about. And people who have nieces, nephews, grandchildren, children of friends or acquaintances, any children that they care about and that they are witnessing being gaslighted. First, if you were gaslighted as a child, it can be even more upsetting to see a child be gaslighted when you are an adult because you know what it felt like. And this is particularly pronounced if it's a child you really care about, and really profoundly if it is your own child and perhaps the gaslighting is happening from a narcissistic co-parent. Secondly, our systems are terrible at protecting gaslighted children. Things like authoritarian structures, telling children to accept stuff at face value, family systems that protect abusers instead of children, and often feeling that we have to protect the image of manipulative adults to children, even when the adults are behaving like a-holes. Children's attachment needs mean that they will never feel emboldened to be able to call out gaslighting. And honestly, why would a child even understand what gaslighting is? Most adults don't get it. Their baseline assumption, the child's baseline assumption, is that they can trust the adults around them, especially parents, mostly because they have to. Children need attachments to survive and to be safe in the world. So if they roll up and believe that the caregiving adults around them are not safe or do not have their best interests in mind, that really leaves the child in a perilous space. And that is where the trauma bonds and justifications begin. The child becomes an expert rationalizer. Mommy's just mad. She doesn't mean it. Daddy's just working hard. Really, they didn't mean it. Maybe it's my fault. Or maybe it's my baby brother's fault for crying so much. And frankly, all of that makes me sick. The idea of a child blaming themselves for a parent or caregiver's narcissistic and manipulative behavior. Because too often, that child will grow up into an adult that will continue to blame themselves and keep justifying. You know the drill. Now, the gaslighting of children can really happen in two ways. the child themselves being gaslighted. For example, an adult telling the child that things didn't happen that clearly did happen, or telling the child that their feelings are wrong, or literally contradicting the facts about school or peers. The parents may deny their abuse. I didn't hit you. Or they may even tell the child to lie. Don't tell the doctor or the teacher or any other parent or family member what happened. And this can draw the child into a sort of collusion around the gaslighting and abuse that obviously they don't want. The other form is when other adults call the gaslighter out. So another adult may witness deceitful behavior or abuse towards the children and call the gaslighter out. Hey, I saw you yelling at the children. That's not okay. And the gaslighter saying something like, I wasn't yelling. Mind your own business, denying that the abusive behavior is even happening. That means that the gaslighter may shroud their behavior even more, isolate the child from the person who is calling them out, and that can result in the child having less support. We know that being gaslighted has numerous downstream impacts for children. It can mean that the child doesn't trust their own instincts, they may become isolated, they may endure an escalation of abuse, become anxious, have behavioral issues in school, become distracted, and they will often blame themselves and doubt themselves. The child will, which is what the gaslighting adult wants from everyone, child and adult. And then it's likely the, those patterns will get continued into adolescence or adulthood, making the child more vulnerable ultimately to entering into gaslighted relationships and toxic relationships in adulthood. Now, siblings can be gaslighting too. A sibling may do something and blame it on another sibling. And especially if the parent is overly aligned with the gaslighting sibling, or the gaslighting sibling is clever and then scolds the child who didn't do the bad behavior. And this is something we often see in scapegoated dynamics as well. Obviously, this can be a confusing, frustrating, and quite harmful dynamic for a child. The challenge is that we are not going to be likely to stop the gaslighted behavior by the adults in a child's life. And you know why that is. These personalities don't change. But the question may be, how can we support and at least make a good faith effort at ungaslighting children? Well, number one, never gaslight a child ourselves, right? If a child says something happened, hold space for that and hear their experience. Don't doubt them. Initially, you have to give space to the child's experience as plausible and let them talk it through. Believe them. This is particularly important with feelings. Never tell a child that they shouldn't feel a certain way. A child feels the way they feel. Number two, if you see it happen, you do not need to go up to the child and say, hey, kiddo, you were just gaslighted. The kid's not going to know what you were talking about. Instead, if you see it happen, say, hey, you okay? I want to know, I want to let you know I saw that. I'm just checking in. Whatever it is that's being denied, you can say, I just want you to know that I just saw you were yelled at. I just want to see if you're okay and ask if you can be helpful to them. This is also useful if you see them being blamed by a sibling for something they didn't do, and the parent believes the lying sibling. Even as adults, we know that even having just one person ungaslight us can be a game changer and leave us more confident in our judgments and instincts. I do remember hearing about a child who was being chronically gaslighted. It was very clear what was happening in that situation. And honestly, all that child needed was one person to let her know, hey, I see what's happening here. And sometimes adults just aren't able to see things clearly. But what you're seeing and what you're thinking, all that stuff, it seems right on point. Adults aren't always right. Anything like that would have gone a long way for that little girl. You don't have to say things like the gaslighter is a bad person or even call them out. You merely need to confirm the child's reality and say, I see you. Number three, check in with the children in your world regularly and ask them how they are feeling, and let them answer and talk to them about it. With younger children, you may be able to pull this out in other modalities, for example, through play, art, music, dance, or other forms of expression for their feelings, instead of just asking them how they're feeling. Gaslighted children are often deprogrammed of their ability to express their feelings. So, having those safe spaces to express feelings can go a long way. Number four, consider confronting the gaslighter when the children are not around, but be very careful with this. Now, remember that concept of true north I've talked about? That there's no point in calling out a narcissist unless something is worth the fight. I think quite often children are worth the fight. So you don't need to roll up to the gaslighter and say, hey, you need to stop gaslighting the children. But you can call them out on the behavior, for example, yelling or something. In 90% of the cases, it's going to get you nowhere. And in some cases, it could actually result in risk because the gaslighter may simply become sneakier or take it out worse on the children or wonder if the children dropped a dime on them. So, again, be very careful. If you are concerned that that may happen, that the child may become more isolated, then don't do it. It's really not worth the risk. People who gaslight children also gaslight adults. So odds are that they will gaslight you or already are. Number five, if you have any ability to do so, or you are able to access any of the decision makers around a child, or if you're the decision maker for the child, you may want to consider getting a child into therapy if that child's being gaslighted. The child does need some safe spaces to talk, and to just have another adult who has eyes on them. Sadly, gaslighting parents in particular will often not support this, but it is worth pursuing if there is a possibility. Number six, use other modalities, film, TV, stories, to sort of check in with children about how they think characters may be feeling. Could be a way to ungaslight a child because you give them different ways of validating emotion and let them reflect on how a character may be feeling, and validating the experience that they think that character is having may make them more confident in their own experiences. Number seven, obviously, if there is a suspicion that a child is being abused, work with healthcare providers, teachers, or other mandated reporters, and above all, ensure that the child is safe. It is essential that if a child is in a circumstance where it is suspected that abuse or neglect is occurring, we'll have some links in the video notes with information on that. Now, gaslighting is often a part of abuse profiles, and it is essential that if there is a suspicion, that everything is done to ensure that a child is safe. Ungaslighting children is very difficult, especially if the gaslighter has regular time spent with the child. The child will still have a rough go of it, because I can tell you, as someone who was gaslighted as a child, it still messes with my mind because it was primal, right? And self doubt still remains something that plagues me. I know where it came from. But when I saw my childhood gaslighters try to gaslight my own children, I went off on them. My healing process actually was protecting my children from intergenerational gaslighting cycles. And there was something fortifying about finally doing something about it after all of these years. But for all children, just one person somehow connecting with a child, and without necessarily telling the child that they're being gaslighted, but saying, hey, I see you, and I see reality, and I'm here to validate that for you, can be more important than you know.
There you are, parents. Let's take note on this. Rather believe your children and investigate later than not to believe them. And there's a huge problem, right? Because a child cannot just make up a story unless something really, really disturbing has happened to this child for them to lie, about whatever it is that we thought is or isn't the truth. But rather believe your child first and deal with the consequences later, right? And remember, hurt people hurt others. So thank you so much for watching this channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, I'm sending you so much love and so much healing and all the beautiful things. Much love. Bye bye.